G'day and welcome to the Inforunners. I'm Execute. Today I'm joined by Osiris Frost. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, man. You're looking warm and rugged up there. I'm also looking warm and rugged up in my face, but that's all good. I'm having my Sunday hobo day. It's technically Monday morning as we do this, about 3, almost 4 o'clock in the morning for me.
Any day that
Um,
ends in Y, right?
yeah, it's a bit like that. But I'm having my January's a very long holiday period for me, so yeah. But I'm getting some giveaways organised for the channel here, so I was hoping to talk about one of them today, but we'll put that off for a little bit. And I know you've got one that's coming up as well to do with your referrals that we'll talk about soon as well. And we're also got we've got a couple. We've got 3 or 4 different things we're planning, but we'll talk about that more as they come along. But today we're going to be talking about the hurricane, and this has been another one that we've had in. We've got a little document that we keep that has lots of different ideas in it, and this is one that's been sitting there for since we've done the other Can We Fix It. So we kind of sat down and went through a whole bunch of ships that we think needed to have a look at, and we were talking before with some of our supporters on the Discord about this ship, and there was many different ways that this ship can be fixed and looked at. And I guess we'll kind of go through it. So even the ship itself, you were looking at before the show, Osiris, and just the you saw many conflictions of just the guns. You were trying to find out what size guns were on it. And do you want to tell us about that a little
My
bit?
mistake for my mistake for looking at the ship matrix first.
Yeah.
This is a textbook example of how the ship matrix is completely off base. If you look at it, it's very easy to think that the Hurricane has 8 hard points, and it does not. It has 6. If you look at Urkel games, you get a more accurate layout.
Yeah.
In fact, you should probably just be looking at Urkel to begin with because it's much clearer to understand the information as it's presented there.
Hmm.
But you got 2 size 3s that are pilot controlled on the front of the ship, and then you have a turret, which is controlled by a turret gunner that has 4 size 3s.
Yeah.
And
Where do you where's your first thought? I'll let you kind of carry this episode. Where's your first thought where the things start to go awry with this ship?
um, first, the big problem for me is that in order to utilize the full complement of firepower on the ship, you need 2 people. And I think that there are many, many scenarios in which those 2 individuals could be split up and given their own fighter, and you'll
Yep.
get a lot more offensive output in that situation than sticking 2 people into the ship.
Mm. So I'm going to have to go check this up, but it's been a while. But the last time I looked at this ship, it was about, what is it, 175, 185, something like that, this ship? Is it
195 US.
195? Oh, wow, it's even worse. Right, so when I look at that, the first thing I think of was, why wouldn't you put them into arrows? You know, like arrows, like what, $90, so you could literally get them into arrows. Yes, you kind of split the firepower, but the redundancy is there because if you lose one ship, you actually have a second ship. But also having 2 ships, you can come at them from 2 different angles, and that's just
Mhm.
if the ships are on the same level. Now, when you know look at this ship, my major problem with this ship, for me, I think it starts with the armor. I think it's literally a glass cannon. Like, if you've ever looked into game design terms, it is all damage. It's got no armor. They've said it breaks really easily. I think another one was that it doesn't have enough power to fire the guns for longer than 5 seconds. Little things like that. So for me, the armor's an issue. I don't know. Is that an issue for you?
That is an issue, and obviously they're faking armor right now by adjusting hit point pools,
Yeah.
which is not a mechanic that's gonna carry through to the finished game. So the armor does have, some potential to fix the ship, as we can get into.
Mm.
Um,
I,
but yeah, it's just to me, of the things that you just mentioned, the power supply that only allows it to fire for brief bursts is a much more concerning thing.
yeah. Well, I think there's multiple ways you could kind of fix this ship, but all of them take him in drastically different directions. So, and that's kind of what, when we were talking before the show, that was clear to me. There are multiple different ways you could fix it, to the point that you could almost have 3 variants or 3 very different ships, so to speak. One simple fix is have less guns so you can fire more guns consistently, right? But then again, that kind of takes away from the appeal of the quad cannons. One suggestion somebody made was why not make it more unique where you take away the guns from the pilot and give more power to the turret gunner, having this kind of homogeneous property between the two parties of the ship, and that would indeed be more interesting. What are your kind of, where do you lean in the way that you would like to fix it?
I sort of look at the ship as like a poor man's redeemer in that its role is sort of like a gunship, isn't it? If the
Mm,
pilot is flying around and somebody else is delivering the bulk of the firepower, then I think that what I would like to see is I'd like to see s- the armor that they end up putting on this thing when they implement armor. I'd like it to be big enough that many small fighters have a difficult, if not impossible, time actually getting through the armor to damage this thing,
right.
and then increase the power plant to the point where you're not limited to 5-second bursts from the turret, and really embrace that gunship role. And it's obviously it's just one single turret, but I think that you need to go all in and not try to make this like a fighter.
So my fix is probably a bit more lengthy than that in the armor area, but bear with me for a minute. This ship in its default state kind of does strafing runs, kind of makes me think of a Stuka in space, but without the bombs. And so basically, you're doing these kind of strafing runs where you shoot at the target for a couple of seconds and then off to the other side. So that's all part of the way the gameplay works. The problem with that is the ship is therefore running a lot, and they'll be being chased. And so basically, the armor would be really beneficial for that. But the fix that I'm thinking of is I'm thinking all the way back to, say, something like the Next Great Starship, where there was a ship in that that had armor or a shield just on one side of the ship as it faced its target, and it kind of like as it flew around it, it could shoot at it. Now that could be applied here. The other way it could be applied without armor is almost like the phallic shield on the Prowler.
A
um
phallic shield?
I think
This is a family show, Execute.
yeah, well that's a different. It's the phalanx. Phalanx shield. I can't remember how, but whatever. I'd have to look it up. But the point I'm trying to get at is, if you could have a shield or an armor that was a part, maybe even a part of the turret, and it faces in a particular direction, that could be really interesting. The other way you could do it is just have armor just on the back of the ship for where it's being chased, which would also be really unique because we don't have any ship like that either. Um, and I,
Real quick, Execute, we have a question in the
yeah,
chat.
yeah, go for it.
Um, Tree0311 asks, "Do you feel that CIG nerfed the Hurricane prior to release because they thought it would be overpowered? Otherwise, or in other words, that this isn't how it was initially designed?"
I think that's a part of it. They originally set out to design a heavy fighter, and I think they ended up as a glass cannon, personally. But that's just me. So I think, yeah, as development went on, it changed.
Yeah, I feel like they tried to turn a fighter or modify a fighter platform into a gunship, and it's kind of has an identity crisis thing going on right now. That's its biggest issue.
And if you kind of go back and run it backwards and trying to turn it back into a heavy fighter, it actually turns out very similar to the Vanguard in a way. It's like a Vanguard with an upsized turret, if you kind of think about it. So that's
Yep.
probably why they changed it. Um, for me, though, that's kind of almost where the ship needs to go. But yes, it does start to tread on the territory of the Vanguard, but the Vanguard has that versatility in its modules and the Hardbridger, the E-Warfare Sentinel, and the kind of explorer long range scout, Harbinger. Yeah, no, not Harbinger. Jeez, Warden,
Harbinger.
Warden.
Oh, Warden.
Yeah. So it's got its different things there, but like for me, like there are a lot of fighters like that that you could. I'd rather a single seat fighter. I think one of the examples you were giving was looking at the hard points of this ship compared to a saber. If you have two people in a saber, do you want to talk about that for a minute? Because you were talking about that before.
Absolutely. So I think that's a much more efficient utilization of a two-person team. Give each of them their own saber. One individual saber has the same hard points as the turret on this. And if you and the pilot controls half the firepower of a saber. So if you take him out of the hurricane and put him in a saber, Now you have 2 sabers. You've gone from 6 size 3 guns to 8 size 3 guns. You have the benefit that Execute mentioned earlier of splitting between 2 different craft. So if one of them gets taken out, you don't lose all that firepower. You still have one ship in the fight.
Mm.
And I think that that's a lot better utilization of 2 fighter pilots. And one of the things that one of our supporters, Edison Trent, was mentioning earlier was that if you have a limitation to how many ships you can take with you, like say you have an Idris, you're only able to fit 3 ships in the hangar.
Mm.
He was saying that maybe under those circumstances, Hurricane would make more sense than 3 standalone fighters. But I don't agree with that necessarily because I think that a fighter wing of 3 Hurricanes is very unbalanced as the way they're currently
Well,
implemented.
yeah, it's all bang, no
Yeah.
defense. So yeah, I think that's the other part of this ship, like as well, is if you think about how this ship would have to react when it's attacked, it's almost like it's like a little mosquito annoying you, and then it's trying to run away, and because you know it's just going to run, you don't bother with it. But eventually, when you chase it, if it's that annoyance, it basically means there has to be another fighter there for it not to be chased. And that also just takes away from the whole thing. Why would you bother having... So this ship is the ship that you have when you know you're taking at least 2 fighters. But that also means you have to have 3 people. So it makes it this very we need 3 people, we need and it just becomes circumstantial. And as soon as it becomes circumstantial like that, you instantly go to more generalized available fighters like the Saber or the Super Hornet or something like that. And even then, when you got the Super Hornet and it's got all that armor, you kind of look at that and go, yes, okay, I'm losing guns, but I'm gaining survivability, and and if something goes wrong, I just go towards the Super Hornet more than I go towards a ship like this. Is that the same kind of way you go, or do you kind of... What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would rather go toward the Super Hornet as well. I think that again, the fundamental drawback to this ship is the power plant does not provide it with the ability to give sustained fire output. Like Tree just asked in the chat again, do we feel like the Hurricane is a good alternative for a torpedo screen as compared to the Hammerhead, being that it's a faster, more maneuverable
It,
ship?
it,
I think that
if
it can do that role, but
Yeah.
again, I think that you have a mechanical problem with this ship's
Mm.
implementation, which is that you can do 5-second bursts of fire, and that's kind of doesn't make it good at doing
Yeah.
anything, in my opinion.
If you kind of break it down, like it's designed to do those kind of strafing runs things, and but no other fighter's going to act like that in the game, and because you will only use this in the niche situations, it's going to take more practice. You've also got to be really working together in this ship, and so it's a ship that you're working together in, but you don't use it very often, so therefore you're going to have to practice heaps, but you don't use it very often. See how that kind of is a disparity? And for me, yeah, the fix could either be up the power so it can at least fire all the time, or put armor on it so at least can fight, fight and defend itself more. So, or maybe it's a bit between the two. So maybe just up the power a little bit and up the armor a little bit, or up the armor in a particular position, like I mentioned before. There are many fixes for this, as in there's a you can move it across as well. I think you also mentioned at the moment, what was that about slaving the guns before the show you mentioned? You're saying that you can't do it with this because it's bespoke. Isn't that what you said?
I don't remember saying that, but my understanding is that the turret guns are not able to be slaved. That may change when they have, or that may change in the future, or they may have said that that's part of the design goals. But I think that you need an individual in the turret to
Well, you
operate those 4 guns.
definitely couldn't put blades on it because it wouldn't have the computer power to run the blades. But imagine if you could. See, that would also bring it back around. If you've got an
So
AI that's
Edison
just
just
shooting at
saying,
anything.
Edison just pointed out in the chat that you can adjust the loadout of this
Mm,
ship so that it can fire for significantly longer than 5 seconds. Which is worth knowing, and I think that's important to do, but out of
mm,
the box, it doesn't do that, and
yeah.
that's good because I think that, again, not to repeat myself, but I think that the fundamental issue with the ship is that it's trying to be too many things, and if they just go hard in the direction of making it like a single turret gunship, uh, and really add the armor to make it, hang out more,
Mm.
uh and give it more of a balanced component loadout, then I think you're going to get a little bit more out of the ship.
Traditionally, glass cannons in, say, a game like a MOBA are generally, not always, but generally some of them are snipers and stuff like that. So I know they've taken the tachyon cannons out of the game, but if you could have used this as a sniper craft that kind of flew around the outside of the battlefield and snipe it in, that could have been an alternative fix as well. For me, there are many fixes. I just think they're all like say there's like a bunch of dials for the ship and they've all kind of been turned down. They all just either one of them needs to be turned right up or they all need to be turned up a little bit. And I think the state of play for this ship kind of tells you what's wrong with the Hurricane in a lot of ways. Like one of the first thing I asked Osiris when we started talking today was, when was the last time you saw a Hurricane in game? And his response was,
I can't remember a time when I've seen a Hurricane in game.
And I think I didn't see one in all of 2020. And I remember in the anniversary sale, they had a skin come up. I was like, who the hell's going to use that? Because nobody I know, like I know there's people that own this ship, but you just don't ever see them flying it because you can't utilize it unless you've got a mate with you. And because it's all combat based, you just don't ever see it. Like I see hammerheads around all the time. And I'm sure I'll see Redeemers around all the time, but for some reason, this particular ship has just fallen through the cracks. It's another one of those ships. I don't know about you, Osiris. Like for me, as I said, it's very open. It's very obvious small fixes for this ship. There's no... normally when we look at something, there's a very glaring example, like this has to be fixed. For me, it's just 3 things here, and you can pick one, and any of them would work and still make the ship unique.
Yeah. And if you did those things, I think it would have a discernible role in combat. It could be either, like Tree said, it could be a torpedo screener. It could be to screen out light fighters. It would have a place in a fleet. But right now, it needs a little bit of a balance tweak. It's not hopeless, but it needs help.
Yeah. It's definitely something not quite right, and I think CIG themselves will obviously be able to look at sales or how many people own this ship and basically see where it's at. So hopefully they can get around to it. Yes, as I said, I've left this one kind of vaguely open because there is no 100% proper fix for me. As in, there's multiple ways you can go. Your closing thoughts there, Osiris? Why I'm just repeating myself at this point.
My closing thoughts are, at the current price point of this ship and the other ships around it, you may want to investigate picking up a $20 CCU to a Corsair before that goes up in price. And just keep it in your back pocket in case this ship never gets the balance that it deserves.
Yeah, and once you get to say something like the Corsair, you've also got the Constellation and MSR. Like again, it's not even $100 to get an MSR, and when you got a ship like this in such a bad way, you can clearly see like it's just not in a good place. The other another fundamental thing with this ship is, besides the Prowler of the ships, this is one of the worst bang for bucks in the entire game. So there's 2 things, obviously, that come into play when it comes to bang for buck is the number of people that it requires, but also it's $1 to UEC value, and the UEC value you get for your dollar is very, very low. And there's a graph, and if you would like to see it, I will link it on the Discord if anyone wants to see it. All right, Osiris, anything? Do you want to? That's it for you.
That's it for me.
All right, so let us know your thoughts below in the comments how you would fix this. I know we've kind of been a bit vague. We are usually a bit more precise with this, but there is a very few different ways you can take the ship. And if there's one that you've thought of that we haven't thought of, please let us know below. He's been Osiris Frost. I've been Execute. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that jazz. And if you want to help us out on Patreon, you can do that as well. And come talk to us on Discord as well. All right. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.